There are some faces you don't forget, not because they're the most famous or the loudest or the most decorated, but because every time they appear on screen, something shifts, you feel it in your chest. Alon Abutbul had that face, and now that face is gone. When news broke that Alon Abutbul passed away this July at the age of 59, something quiet cracked in the hearts of film lovers, especially those who knew how much depth and gravity he brought to every role. He wasn't a household name in Hollywood, but he was your actor. The one you noticed even in a crowded frame. The one who didn't need a monologue to say everything. He was the kind of actor who disappeared into his roles, who looked you in the eye through a screen and made you feel like he knew something about pain that he wasn't saying out loud. Now that he's gone, we look back not only on what he left behind, but also on the quiet, powerful presence he carried through 4 decades of cinema. Today we take a step back, not just to mourn, but to remember. Not just to list films, but to retrace the emotional arc of a man who gave himself quietly and completely to every character he ever played. Alon Abutbul was born on May 28, 1965, in Kiryat Ata, a modest industrial town near the port city of Haifa in northern Israel. His family of Mizrahi Jewish descent carried the legacy of immigrants, of people who had known struggle and displacement and who saw survival as both burden and badge of pride. His father worked in construction. His mother was a homemaker. Life was not luxurious, but it was filled with rhythm, the rhythm of work, of Friday dinners, of community. And young Alon, from an early age, showed signs that he saw the world a little differently. He was the kind of child who didn't just ask questions, he asked why you asked the question in the first place. By the time he reached high school, he had become obsessed with stories, not just reading them, but living them, performing them. He enrolled in Thelma Yellin High School of the Arts, Israel's premier performing arts academy. It was there that the fire truly lit. Surrounded by like-minded students and mentored by passionate teachers, Alon began to explore not just the mechanics of acting, but the psychology of character, the soul of story. His first performances were in student productions, Shakespeare, Beckett, Chekhov, but already his eyes had that gravity. Fellow students recall how even in rehearsal, he would disappear into character, as if possessed by a force deeper than ambition. He wasn't performing to be applauded. He was performing because it was the only way he knew how to breathe. In the early 2000s, something shifted. The Israeli film scene was expanding slowly, earning international attention. And within this cultural bloom, Alon Abutbul emerged not as a star, but as a constant. Like the quiet heartbeat of serious Israeli cinema, he was always there in the background or foreground, but never absent. One of his earliest breakout roles came in Shtai Etzbaot Mitzidon, 2 Fingers from Sidon in the 1980s, where he portrayed a young Israeli soldier stationed in Lebanon. The film touched a nerve in the country, and Alon's performance, a mix of vulnerability and conflict, was a revelation. This was not the glorified soldier. This was a boy in a man's war. Then came Beaufort, 2007, a film that would mark a turning point not only in Israeli cinema, but in Alon's career. Set in an isolated IDF outpost in Lebanon, the film is a meditation on fear, leadership, and futility. Alon's portrayal of Lieutenant Barda was haunting, subdued, exhausted, quietly breaking under the weight of duty. The film was nominated for an Oscar for Best Foreign Language Film, and many critics singled out Alon's performance as its emotional anchor. In that same year, he also appeared in The Band's Visit, a poetic story about an Egyptian police band stranded in a small Israeli town. Though his role was small, the film became a global hit, proving that Israeli films could be intimate, funny, and profoundly human. By the late 2000s, Hollywood came knocking. He was cast as a Burmese rebel leader in Rambo 2008, opposite Sylvester Stallone, a stark contrast to his usual nuanced roles. But even in that high-octane environment, Alon brought subtlety. He didn't just play the villain. He played a man hardened by decades of war with a glimmer of something broken behind the eyes. Later in The Dark Knight Rises, 2012, he appeared as a nuclear physicist, another small but key role that added to his global profile. Yet through it all, Alon never abandoned Israeli film or TV. His role in False Flag, a hit espionage thriller series, won praise for its understated menace and psychological complexity. It was the kind of role that didn't shout. It simmered. If there's one film that distills the quiet fire inside Alon Abutbul, it's Beaufort. Released in 2007, the film is set during Israel's withdrawal from southern Lebanon in 2000 and tells the story of a group of young Israeli soldiers stationed at the crumbling Beaufort Fortress. But this is not a war movie in the conventional sense. It's a psychological chamber piece, a long goodbye, a countdown towards something no one can name. In this atmospheric pressure cooker, Abutbul plays Lieutenant Zev Barda, a senior officer overseeing the soldiers as they await orders. Unlike the younger, more visibly frightened troops, Barda carries his tension inward. He doesn't shout, he doesn't cry, but he breaks slowly, quietly. You see it in the pauses, the 1,000-yard stare, the cigarette he lights and forgets. In Barda, Alon channels the terror of a man who's supposed to lead while dying inside. It's said that Alon spent time embedded with real IDF officers before shooting. He didn't just research, he absorbed. He watched how soldiers paced when anxious, how they joked to hide fear, how silence settled in when the mortar shells weren't falling. He brought all of that to screen with heartbreaking restraint. Behind the scenes, Alon reportedly insisted on real locations, real uniforms, real grime. He believed that the audience could feel truth, even if they couldn't name it. In one powerful scene, no music, no explosion, he simply stands under the fortress archway, staring into darkness, radio in hand. That image alone carries the weight of a nation's weariness. Beaufort was nominated for the Academy Award for Best Foreign Language Film. Though it didn't win, it marked a seismic moment for Israeli cinema. And in the middle of that moment stood Abutbul, not claiming the spotlight, but anchoring it. His performance was a masterclass in less is more. As the Jerusalem Post wrote, "He does not act Barda, he is Barda." Some actors fade quietly into the background of film history. Others burn brightly for a moment and disappear. But a rare few like Alon Abutbul linger. Not because of scandals or flashy stardom, but because they became part of the emotional fabric of the stories we carry with us. Alon was not just an actor, he was a presence. And now that presence is a memory, but one that won't go quiet. What made him unforgettable was not just talent, it was truth. That sense every time he appeared that he wasn't playing someone else. He was someone else. He became the troubled father, the haunted soldier, the calculating agent, the exhausted philosopher. He didn't act as if. He lived it. That's why his scenes stayed with us. They were never decorative, they were lived in. Honest. Even when he made brief appearances in global blockbusters, The Dark Knight Rises, Rambo, or international TV dramas, he didn't chase screen time. He chased honesty. And in his homeland, Israeli audiences knew this was our Alon. The guy who didn't leave, who kept choosing complex scripts, who told stories of people society forgot. Colleagues speak of a man with no ego on set. A man who stayed after wrap to help younger actors rehearse. Who called directors late at night not to ask for more lines, but to understand the silence between lines. He was obsessed not with performance, but with truth and human gesture. When he passed away in July 2025, the tributes were not just full of praise, they were full of ache. There was something gentle in the grief. Directors recalled a man who respected every set like sacred ground. Co-stars spoke of how he brought out their best by being fully present. Fans around the world shared clips, not the loud ones, but the quiet ones. The moments where he looked instead of spoke, where a single nod carried volumes. And now in his absence, his legacy speaks louder than ever. Film schools in Israel have already begun screening retrospectives of his work. Young actors are studying his restraint, his subtext, his refusal to impress. Because in a world that rewards noise, Alon was a reminder that there is still power in stillness, in simplicity, in showing up not to be seen, but to see. He once said in an interview, "The role is not about me. I'm just a bridge for the story to reach the audience." That's what he was, a bridge. Between silence and meaning, between pain and compassion, between the character on screen and the life behind the screen. Alon Abutbul is gone, but his spirit remains etched into our memory like light falling through a dusty window, quiet, steady, unforgettable. If you've ever sat quietly after a film thinking not about the plot, but about the people, their fears, their silences, their unresolved longing, chances are you've already met Alon Abutbul. Maybe you didn't know his name, but you knew his presence. So now let us not let that presence fade. Watch his films, share his scenes, talk about his choices, tell someone younger that greatness doesn't always come with noise. That some of the most powerful performances happen in a whisper, in a pause, in the stillness of a man who refuses to fake it. Let Alon's legacy be more than memory. Let it be motion.